We'll read one more chapter about Frog and Toad. This one's called The Story. One day in summer, Frog was not feeling well. Toad, said Frog, you are looking quite green. But I always look green, said Frog. I am a frog. Today you look very green, even for a frog, said Toad. Get into my bed and take a rest. Toad made Frog a cup of hot tea. Frog drank the tea, and then he said, tell me a story while I am resting. So in the last story, Toad was trying to get Frog out of bed, and now Toad is trying to get Frog into bed because he's not feeling well. He's a good friend, isn't he? He's trying to take care of him. Tell me a story. All right, said Toad. Let me think of a story to tell you. Toad thought and thought, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. I will go out on the front porch and walk up and down, said Toad. Do you think that will help? Perhaps that will help me think of a story. Toad walked up and down on the porch for a long time, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. Then Toad went into the house and stood on his head. Do you think that's going to help him think of a story? Why are you standing on your head? Asked Frog. I hope that if I stand on my head, it will help me to think of a story, said Toad. Toad stood on his head for a long time, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. Then Toad poured a glass of water over his head. Yikes. Why are you pouring water over your head, said Frog. I hope that if I pour water over my head, it will help me to think of a story, said Toad. Toad poured many glasses of water over his head, but he still could not think of a story to tell Frog. Then Toad began to bang his head against the wall. I don't think that's going to help. That's probably just going to give him a headache. Why are you banging your head against the wall? Asked Frog. I hope that if I bang my head against the wall hard enough, it will help me to think of a story, said Toad. I am feeling much better now, Toad, said Frog. I do not need you to think of a story anymore. Then you get out of bed and let me get into it, said Toad, because now I feel terrible. Frog said, would you like me to tell you a story, Toad? Yes, said Toad, if you know one. Once upon a time, said Frog, there were two good friends, a frog and a toad. The frog was not feeling well. He asked his friend the toad to tell him a story. The toad could not think of a story. He walked up and down the porch, but he could not think of a story. He stood on his head, but he could not think of a story. He poured water over his head, but he could not think of a story. He banged his head on the wall, but he could still not think of a story. Then the toad did not feel so well, and the frog was feeling better. So the toad went to bed, and the frog got up and told him a story. The end. How was that, Toad? Asked Frog. But Toad did not answer. He had fallen asleep. Well, I think we'll stop there for today. I've got a few questions for you. In the first story, what season was it? And what was Frog so excited about? Who was he going to see? Why did Toad not want to get out of bed? And what trick did Frog play on him to get him out of bed? In the next story, how were Frog and Toad being good friends to each other? And what did Frog ask Toad to do for him? one more question. What did Frog do to try and think of a story? What things did he do to try to help him think of a good story to tell to Frog? Well, I hope you enjoyed those stories, and I have a few more Frog and Toad stories to tell you another day. In the meantime, enjoy spending time outside with your family, and I hope you have fun learning all about amphibians, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.